Private Tommy Chen raises his hand in the back of the packed auditorium. General Patterson has just finished explaining the new training protocol that will cut physical fitness requirements for incoming recruits. Sir, I have a question. The general looks surprised. Questions from enlisted personnel during these briefings are rare. Questions from privates are almost unheard of. Go ahead, son. Tommy stands up, his voice clear and respectful. Sir, with respect, how will lowering standards help soldiers survive in combat? Before continuing the story, let us know in the comments, what city are you watching this story from? The auditorium falls completely silent. 300 soldiers and officers stop breathing at once. Nobody questions a 3-star general, especially not a private who's been in the Army for 8 months. General Patterson sets down his notes and looks directly at Tommy. His face is unreadable. Excuse me, Private? Chen, sir. Private Tommy Chen. Private Chen, are you suggesting you know better than the Pentagon how to train soldiers? Tommy's hands shake slightly, but his voice stays steady. No, sir. I'm asking how we prepare soldiers for war by making training easier. The officers in the front rows turn in their seats to stare at Tommy. Colonel Williams, the base commander, looks like he wants to disappear into his chair. Major Rodriguez whispers something urgent to the sergeant major beside her. But Tommy isn't done. Sir, I've been through basic training. I've seen what happens when soldiers can't meet physical standards. They get hurt. They can't keep up. And in combat, that means people die. General Patterson walks away from the podium and down the center aisle. His footsteps echo in the silent auditorium. He stops directly in front of Tommy's row. What makes you think you understand combat, Private? Tommy looks the general in the eye. Because my brother died in Afghanistan when his unit couldn't move fast enough to escape an ambush, sir. The silence in the room becomes absolute. General Patterson studies Tommy's face for a long moment. Tell me about your brother. Tommy takes a breath. His voice gets quieter, but everyone in the auditorium can hear every word. Staff Sergeant David Chen, 3rd tour in Afghanistan. His convoy got hit by IEDs and small arms fire. The soldiers with him were good people, sir, but some of them couldn't run with full gear. They couldn't climb over walls or carry wounded soldiers to safety. Tommy's hands are steady now. The fear is gone, replaced by something deeper. My brother stayed behind to help them. He died covering their retreat because they weren't fast enough to get out on their own. General Patterson nods slowly. I'm sorry for your loss, son. Thank you, sir. But I don't want your sympathy. I want you to explain how lowering standards prevents other soldiers from dying the same way. The general walks back toward the podium, then stops and turns around. Private Chen, you've asked a fair question. You deserve an honest answer. For 18 years, Tommy Chen has been the quiet kid who never caused trouble. Good grades, stayed out of fights, helped his parents run their restaurant after school. When David died, Tommy could have gone to college on his brother's GI Bill benefits. Instead, he enlisted the day after David's funeral. His drill sergeants noticed Tommy immediately, not because he was the strongest or fastest recruit, but because he never quit. When other soldiers struggled with obstacle courses, Tommy stayed after hours to help them practice. When someone couldn't meet the minimum standards, Tommy ran extra laps with them until they could. Tommy finished basic training at the top of his class, but he didn't celebrate. He requested assignment to the same base where David had trained. He wanted to understand how soldiers were prepared for war. What he found troubled him. Physical fitness standards had been gradually lowered over the past 5 years. The reasoning was sound, the military needed more recruits, and fewer young people could meet the traditional requirements. But Tommy saw the real-world consequences. Soldiers who barely met the reduced standards struggled in advanced training. They got injured more often. They couldn't carry their equipment effectively. Most importantly, they couldn't help their teammates when things went wrong. Tommy kept his concerns to himself until today. But when General Patterson announced further reductions in physical requirements, Tommy couldn't stay quiet. His brother died because soldiers couldn't meet the demands of combat. Lowering standards wouldn't honor David's sacrifice. It would guarantee more soldiers would die the same way. General Patterson returns to the podium and addresses the entire auditorium. Private Chen has raised an important point, one that deserves more than a quick answer. He pulls out his phone and makes a brief call. Cancel my next meeting. We're going to continue this discussion. The general sits on the edge of the stage, making himself level with the audience. Let me explain the thinking behind these changes. We're facing a recruitment crisis. Only 23% of young Americans are physically qualified for military service. If we maintain current standards, we won't have enough soldiers to defend the country. He looks directly at Tommy. But Private Chen is asking a different question. He's asking whether it's better to have more soldiers who might not survive combat or fewer soldiers who are better prepared. Tommy stands again. Sir, may I suggest a third option? General Patterson raises an eyebrow. Go ahead. Instead of lowering standards, why don't we improve training? Give recruits more time and better resources to meet the requirements. Help them succeed instead of making success easier. The suggestion ripples through the auditorium. Officers exchange glances. Enlisted personnel nod in agreement. That would cost more money and take more time, the general points out. Sir, how much does it cost to replace soldiers who die because they weren't properly prepared? General Patterson is quiet for a moment. Then he pulls out a notebook and starts writing. Continue, Private. Tommy's confidence grows as he speaks. My brother's unit had 6 weeks of advanced combat training before deployment. Maybe they needed 12 weeks. Maybe they needed better fitness programs before they even started combat training. And if that means fewer soldiers overall? Sir, my brother always said he'd rather fight alongside 5 soldiers he could trust than 50 soldiers he couldn't depend on. A sergeant in the third row stands up. Sir, if I may, Private Chen is right. I've served with soldiers who met the old standards and soldiers who barely meet the new ones. There's a real difference in their capabilities. Another voice from the middle of the auditorium. Sir, we're asking 18-year-olds to carry 60 pounds of gear through mountains and deserts. If they can't handle that in training, how will they handle it in combat? More soldiers begin speaking up. Officers and enlisted personnel sharing experiences, expressing concerns they've kept private until now. General Patterson listens to each comment, taking notes and asking follow-up questions. What was supposed to be a 30-minute briefing turns into a 2-hour discussion about training, standards, and the real cost of military service. Finally, the general stands and addresses the room. Private Chen, you've started something important here today. You've reminded us that standards exist for a reason, to keep soldiers alive. He closes his notebook and looks around the auditorium. I'm going to recommend that the Pentagon reconsider these policy changes. Instead of lowering standards, we'll propose extending training programs and improving preparation methods. The room erupts in applause. General Patterson raises his hand for quiet. But I want everyone to understand, this decision will be controversial. Some people will argue we're being too rigid, too demanding. When they do, I'm going to tell them about Private Chen and his brother Staff Sergeant David Chen. He looks directly at Tommy. I'm going to tell them that standards aren't barriers to keep people out. They're tools to bring people home. After the meeting, officers and enlisted personnel surround Tommy. Some want to thank him for speaking up. Others want to share their own stories about soldiers who died because they weren't adequately prepared. Colonel Williams approaches Tommy as the crowd thins out. Private, that took courage. Most soldiers wouldn't challenge a general, even if they disagreed. Sir, my brother died for his beliefs. The least I can do is speak up for mine. What you did today will save lives. You know that, right? Tommy thinks about David, the brother who always pushed him to do better, to never settle for good enough. Sir, I hope so. That's what David would have wanted. 6 months later, Tommy receives orders for officer candidate school. The letter includes a personal recommendation from General Patterson, who wrote, Private Chen demonstrates the moral courage and practical wisdom we need in our future leaders. Tommy accepts the appointment, but not for personal advancement. He accepts because the military needs officers who understand that true strength comes from high standards, rigorous training, and the willingness to speak difficult truths. On graduation day, Tommy's parents sit in the front row as he receives his commission as second lieutenant. They're proud, but also worried about losing another son to military service. After the ceremony, Tommy finds them in the crowd. I know you're scared, he tells them. But David taught me that some things are worth the risk. Serving with honor is one of them. His mother hugs him tightly. Just promise us you'll be careful. I promise I'll be prepared. David would expect nothing less. Lieutenant Tommy Chen reports to his first assignment with the same quiet determination he's shown since basic training. He'll serve with soldiers trained to higher standards because one private had the courage to ask a difficult question. Some changes happen slowly, through committees and policy reviews. Others happen in a moment, when someone decides that speaking truth is more important than staying silent. Tommy learned that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about doing what's right even when you're terrified of the consequences. His brother would have been proud.